I know that whenever I see Tenyaku on the schedule, it's going to be a tough day. There's no easy landings at Tenyaku, and today was no exception.
It's bumpy today. Whoa, this is going to be interesting.
When you go there, there's no room for error. You've got to be right on the numbers. You've got to have your airspeed and your rate of descent perfect to make sure you're getting down and break into Tenyaku safely. During the windy season, we try to get away from base as early as we can in the morning, as early as could be reasonable for the passengers. The wind usually picks up from around 9 or 10 o'clock, and so we aim as far as possible to get airborne around 7 a.m. if we have everything ready. I like to have a good amount of time to pre-flight and prepare. After I wake up, I check the weather. This time of year, I'm especially looking at the wind. Not just the average wind, but I'm also looking at the gusts, trying to get a sense of what to expect around different mountains in Lesotho. For this flight today, I left home around 5:30. I like to open up and get the aircraft ready and get my gear all set and make sure that I have a little bit of extra time just to mentally prepare and be ready for the flight. Yesterday we had some crazy winds come through Lesotho with gusts at some of our wind stations over 40 knots. And so luckily we didn't have to fly yesterday because there were no emergency flights. But I was interested to see what the forecast looked like for today. And it definitely looked better. There was later in the day some gusts reaching 30 knots in the forecast. But on the whole, generally, especially in the morning section, it looked a lot better. So the schedule for today had me going to two mountain airstrips, so from Masero, 2 different stops and then coming back. The first was at Kobenya to drop off 3 nurses, and then I would fly empty to Tenyaku to pick up a patient and a doctor and bring them back to Masero. We got going from base just about on time. Our first leg to Kobenya was about 20 to 25 minutes. As we reached the first mountains and crossed onto the downwind side of them, things started to already get a little bumpy, and I could hear the normal nervous laughter from passengers as they start to expect that the flight is going to be bumpy. As I crossed into the Kobenya Valley, we had some light to moderate turbulence. As I flew over, I could see that I would definitely be needing to land on the downhill runway. We typically only use this runway if the wind is fairly strong favor in it, because it's a little harder when a runway slopes away from you as you're trying to land it. Just is a little harder to hit your mark, and so we typically only use this runway if the wind is strong in that direction. The approaches are sort of tricky. We've got a cliff face and quite a bit of illusions just to try and judge the height on that approach.
Okay, super let's breathe. Left, stop, left, check, green lights. Okay, ground speed check, approach is stable.
Thankfully today the turbulence was pretty light, and we got down into Kobenya just fine. Kobenya is an airstrip we come to fairly regularly. It's very remote and hard to access by road. If you do come by road, it involves probably a multi-hour hike to actually reach the clinic where we land. As a result, it's one of the places that we service fairly regularly, as it's the easiest way in and out. Clinic is about a 5-minute walk or so from where we land, so from the clinic you can pretty much see when the aircraft is there.
Hello. What's wrong?
I wanted to get going on the second leg as soon as I could. I knew that the wind wasn't going to get better for the day, and I still really wanted to make it into Tenyaku. I knew that the patient there was needing to come to Maseru for a checkup, and so I really wanted to make sure that I was able to collect him today.
Checked. We are good to go. Check. Speed check. Continue.
Flying from Kobenya across to Tenyaku is not a common leg. We typically do operations to the south and north, in different flights, but today, just the way that the schedule worked out, had me going from this airstrip in the south all the way across to one out there in the north. In fact, Tenyaku is our furthest airstrip from base, up right in the top right-hand corner of Lesotho. It's actually very close to the South African border. Once you're there in the village, there's just one mountain range, and then you're in South Africa. And what's interesting to me when I go there is that just across there, literally one mountain away, is a resort or like a campsite and a popular place for hikers and people to go in South Africa. And I often would go there as a child, and so it's really interesting to be on the other side and to see the difference between Lesotho and South Africa from that perspective. There's no easy landings at Tenyaku. Even if the wind is calm, you've got basically two options. You can land up the hill, or if the wind is blowing a little, it usually favors the downhill landing. The reason that both of those landings are tricky is you kind of got to weigh the pros and cons. If the wind is calm and you decide to take the uphill landing, once you turn final approach, you're committed, and you've got quite a long stretch where you are committed to the landing with no easy abort. However, that actual touchdown and landing is a little more technically easy than the other direction. And so if there is a little bit of wind blowing, it typically blows up the hill, which means that you have to go around for the downhill landing. That's pretty much what I was expecting for today. The reason that landing is tricky is you've got to fly a very specific path in kind of a valley and get lined up onto final approach. And on final approach, there's this little hill that's basically directly in line with your final approach path. And so you end up kind of doglegging, and depending on how you fly that leg, very often you can still be turning onto final approach by the time your wheels are touching down. So it's a really technical approach, and always a tricky one. As I passed overhead the runway, I could see the windsocks, and I figured probably from what I could see there was about a 10-knot wind on the ground, and that was a little bit crossed from the right-hand side if I was landing down the hill. So I kind of factored all that in, and typically the right-hand crosswind here is a little more stable than the left-hand one, so I was pretty happy to give it a try. So the approach is very specific. You start descending overhead the field, and you start a turn, getting your downwind and your base checks done even before you're hitting the base, because this approach is kind of a base final merge. You try and get everything done before you are too far onto your base leg.
Okay. Feels pretty stable at here for now. Let's see what it's like on base leg. All engine checks complete, green light. Runway looks clear. B66, we've got some wind from the right.
So we made it down. No problems with the approach or the land, and I did realize once I was on the ground that the wind was a little stronger than I thought. I had noticed on my previous visit that some of the tires on the windsock had broken, and so the windsock was not able to give me a good indication of what I was looking at. But one of my jobs here is to try and keep track of the airstrips, and so I had factored that in. I had 2 new windsocks under my seat that I could leave with the airstrip workers, or the people from the village who look after the airstrip, and I could leave that with them and get them installed. So that should be better next time, and should be able to get a better idea of the wind next time. After loading up the doctor and the patient, we were back on our way to Maseru. Usually once we get back to base, I have quite a long list of things to do, especially during these COVID times. I typically get all the paperwork done for the flight, my own personal records, as well as the manifest, and just a record of who the passengers were, and all of those details. And then our ops crew, the guys who help us on the ground, take care of the refueling and sanitizing the aircraft, getting it cleaned after we've had passengers in it. During the windy season, when we leave on these earlier morning flights, I really like I like getting away early, and then what's really fun is once I get back to the hangar, everyone's here and the maintenance team is working hard, and it's just always really nice to arrive and to see them always hard at work fixing and up to all their various things with our aircraft behind us, making sure that they're maintained very well for the work that we do. So that's today's flight. Thanks for joining, and I was really pleased that we were able to get into both of those places. It looks like for the next couple of days we'll have similar conditions, so I'm hopeful that our scheduled flights and our code ones for the next few days will be definitely manageable with the weather that we have. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I appreciate it. Cheers.